Imagine a new kind of investing, a potentially life-changing way to invest that honors biblical principles, the kind of principles that you and I grew up with. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has made biblically responsible investing possible, offering mutual funds and ETFs that are filtered for biblical principles. Don't compromise your values. Invest with Timothy Plan. Ask your financial advisor or call Timothy Plan at 1-800-TIM-PLAN. Again, that's 1-800-846-7526 and discover what it means to be a biblically responsible investor. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing. Mutual funds distributed by Timothy Partners Ltd. and ETFs distributed by Foreside Fund Services LLC. As a paid testimonial, there is no guarantee of future performance and each experience will differ. Well, hello, welcome again to another MemoPOD. This is different. Those of you that are watching, you can probably tell I am recording this one, not in the heck hole. So if the acoustics sound different audio-wise, and obviously the visuals are going to seem different. I got a trophy over here. That's Dwight from The Office that's dangling above my head. That's going to be a little alarming to many of you watching this, right? I mean, I can tip down, but I don't think it's going to... No, you're still going to see him. Anyway, but the reason this had to happen is just had to happen. Schedule-wise, I am... well, we're meeting ourselves coming and going. We're trying to sell a home, and because we're trying to do that, we got to be out of the home. And even though the heck hole isn't technically in the home, and we're not selling the heck hole, and it's going to come with us, you can't really be there. And you know, when people are, although I could hide in there, they'd never know, you know. But it's a thing that the realtors don't want you around. So anyway, it's booted us from our house this week, and our schedules have been off. So as a consequence, I am recording this here at the place of business. I just discarded my glasses. I'm done with them for the day. Okay, so a lot of things that I want to get to here on the program, on the MemoPOD. For those of you that are sticking around, our paying subscribers, just to give you a little taste of what's coming, you have this event. Okay, and I'm even going to call it a revival because there are people that's going to be my whole point when we get into the second half. People get all bent out of shape when you start calling things a revival. Well, technically, biblically, it's not a revival. Well, technically, biblically, the word revival, the way that it's used, I'm not sure why we're considering this a major significant point of doctrine that we need to argue over. But, so you have this event, this worshipful event that happens on the campus of Auburn University. And you have over 200 kids that get baptized. These are college kids. Now, do I think that all 200 of those likely, statistically, will end up being sold-out believers in the gospel of Jesus Christ and making disciples in His name? Statistically, that would tell me probably not. But am I supposed to react that way? When I find out that over 200 people were baptized into Jesus, I'm supposed to sit here and say, nah, I bet that's not real. Because if that's what I'm supposed to, the cynical attitude, if that's what I'm supposed to have, sorry, I don't. And the fact that we've got people, professing believers online that are, well, if it's a real revival, they'll be doing this and that and that. Would you just blow it out your ear? I mean, that's what I don't know, just sad sacks. So I want to get into that a little bit in the second half. And also, you see this Scott Smith guy? The guy whose daughter was sexually assaulted at school, but then he ended up getting arrested for his outbursts at the school board meeting and their transgender policy and all of that he believes led to it. He's kind of the poster child for this, but in a larger sense, there is this emerging trend in our culture to demonize concerned parents that form groups like Moms for Liberty. And my profession in particular, the teaching profession, I mean, I'm constantly being told that people who advocate for parental rights are the enemy. And I wholeheartedly disagree. And I'll explain to you why when we get into the second half, and we'll discuss that. Those of you who are paid subscribers would love it if all of you were. But I understand certainly that your money is precious and you want to be a good steward of it. And if this isn't a good use of that money, then you shouldn't do it. But I I would love it if you would. Okay, so let's get into what we're talking about here. First of all, I made a decision, and this has been a few years ago, that I made the decision, and it is one of my favorite decisions that I've ever made. By the way, sorry, I didn't say this. There is a chance, being that I'm recording here in school where I teach, there is a chance that we'll get a PA announcement or there'll be a knock at the door, some kind of interruption. I put a sign on the door over there so that it wouldn't be an interruption, but we can't be sure. So anyway, just know if something like that happens, we'll return to our regularly scheduled program shortly thereafter. So it's been a few years ago now. This was the decision that I made. The Holy Spirit was convicting me about this. The only word I can use for it or term I can use for it is political idolatry that I was guilty of. And when I say political idolatry, I mean not in the purest sense where I intentionally worshipped politics and worshipped politicians, but do I believe that I was convinced that the rise and fall of my safety and security rested on who got elected and my children and all that? Yeah, I think I was to that point, that I was trusting in princes and kingdoms for my peace, security, and safety, all of those things, happiness, joy. Yeah, I think it got to that point. Political idolatry also in the sense of, I mean, if you really want to know what you worship, where do you spend your time and where do you spend your money? And yeah, I mean, that was maybe not money so much. I was never a big contributor to campaigns, but certainly my time and my energies and my focus were far more dedicated to the political realm than anything else, and it wasn't particularly close. So I keep getting convicted by the Holy Spirit in this political idolatry stuff, because not only do I think it was damaging me, but I'm quite confident that I was participating in developing a political idolatry in other people that I had an influence over. Since it was all that I would talk about and it was all that I would focus on and concentrate on, that kind of rubbed off on others. And so I knew one of the most effective things that I could do was to eliminate the echo chamber. In other words, start with social media. And on social media, rather than just listen and rather than just follow and rather than just look at the accounts and the commentaries and the ideas of people that were on my side, that were on my team, that were part of my tribe, actually listen to others. Now, I had to go through this process of weeding out the most shrill and the most radical of the voices on both sides. Because if there's one thing that will drive you back into an echo chamber, it's listening to the radical communist nuts that are out there and the things that they want to do and want to accomplish. And if I begin believing that that's what the opposition totally is, if my understanding and characterization of a member of my congregation, a member of my church, a part of our body who happens to be a Democrat or somebody who has more progressive politics, if my immediate caricature of them that I have in my mind is Al Sharpton or is Chris Hayes from MSNBC or some of the even more radical fringe voices and communist activists, if that's how I see them, well, that's not a good thing, because that's not who they are and that's not what they are. They aren't those people. And so lumping that all in, it's not a good thing. So I had to go through that process, just like I wouldn't want somebody to look at Donald Trump and say, oh, well, that's what, that's what Peter believes, because it clearly isn't. And it's clearly not the way that I would operate and the way that I would do things. So I wanted to eliminate those kinds of fringe voices that led me to believe, well, this is how all of them are. I wanted something that would challenge what had become very convenient. I was finding that my faith always matched my politics, and there was never any conflict there. My faith was not challenging my politics, which means, and this is the conclusion I came to, I had a faith that was submissive to my politics. And that isn't the way it's supposed to work, okay? You're supposed to have a faith, a politics that is subject to your faith. Your faith should be informing your politics, not vice versa. And I don't think I was good at that. So anyway, getting back to this, I think it was one of the best things that I've ever done to diversify who I follow and taking in ideas and thoughts that maybe aren't my initial gut reaction. So that's been good. But here's what's been bad about that decision. What's been bad about that decision is I am more conscious and more aware of when my side, when the political right does things that they condemn in the political left, but they justify it and they excuse it. You see, here's what I've always seen. I've always seen the hypocrisy from the other side. I've seen the political left doing things that they condemn the right for doing. They cry Christian nationalism. But who are the ones who are doing brutal, blatant politicking, say, in the traditionally black churches? I mean, that's the left that does that. You have leftist politicians who go and deliver political speeches from the pulpit in election year at a number of churches, left-leaning churches, all over the country, all the time. So you're doing the very thing that you condemn. And that's just one example of it. And that's the way I've always seen it. But listening now and trying to listen more to people from the other side, I notice that there are those on the right that do this quite a bit. And I understand we all have hypocrisy in us. It's not just hypocrisy. Because I shudder to think how many times I did that very thing. What worries me about that is that as a Christian, we debilitate, we destroy, we undermine our witness as servants of truth when we start granting moral clemency to people who do bad stuff, perversion on our own side. Now, you might be thinking, well, he's getting ready to launch into a thing on Donald Trump. Do I think Donald Trump factors in? Yes. I think that it very much undermines the authenticity and the seriousness and the effectiveness of your claim to care about moral character in politicians. You remember, I used to have a big sign that was in my room. All of my friends were hanging up sports posters, and I had all kinds of political posters all over my room. And one of them was from the 1992 presidential election between George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton. And it was, before you vote, think about who you really trust. And the whole thing with Bill Clinton's character counts, character matters. And yes, I still believe that. And I believe that whether it's Bill Clinton or whether it's Donald Trump. And if character was a disqualifying factor when it was Bill Clinton, why all of a sudden are we saying, well, we're electing a president, not a pastor? Okay, that's the stuff the left was saying with Bill Clinton. So, do I think that it involves Donald Trump? Yeah, I do. But that's not what I'm talking about here. That's not what this issue is today. Here's what I saw over the course, this would have been last week. Okay, the Washington Post was the one that ran the story about Susanna Gibson. Did you see the story about Susanna Gibson? Susanna Gibson is a Democrat candidate for the Virginia House of Delegates. And she, apparently, because this became public, she and her husband had used a website that is called Chatterbait. And they go onto this website and they stream sex acts, which means they're performing pornography for rolling cameras, for people on the site. And they took financial payments. People would request particular sex acts to watch them do, and they would agree to do it for a certain amount of money, and they'd accept the money. Okay? That may end up proving illegal under Virginia's prostitution law. I don't know if it will or not. But this all becomes public that she and her husband did that, and she's a candidate for public office for the Virginia House of Delegates. Is perversion? These are two parents. They're parents of a couple kids. And as I said, it may end up being illegal. But here's what I saw on the left. Because politics is the only religion that matters to people, because power is the only God that is actually worshipped these days, there was this massive movement on the left to rally around and circle the wagons around Susanna Gibson. They didn't. So many people on the left were afraid to recognize the moral deficiency of one of their own, the moral deficiency in the decision-making of one of their own. They can't call that out. And so instead, they've sought to make her a celebrity. Let me read this to you. The day the Washington Post article hit, a Virginia state senator named Louise Lucas, she went forward to defend Susanna Gibson and calls on her fellow Democrats to, quote, make this the biggest fundraising day of her campaign. So it comes out that one of your potential colleagues, certainly one of your cohorts in your party, your political tribe, has been engaged in really pornographic film, is what it is. You're streaming acts live, but it's pornography, and you're accepting money for it. And your initial reaction is, let's celebrate that and make this the biggest fundraising day of her campaign. This Louise Lucas, this leading Democrat state senator in Virginia, railed that she was ticked off. She didn't use those words. And I thought, okay, you're ticked off at Gibson's lack of discretion and the embarrassment she brought on the party? No, she is ticked off at Republicans for making this an issue. And they weren't alone. She wasn't alone. Emily's List, the big pro-abortion lobby group and all of that, and several other progressive voices, progressive organizations, they all expressed outrage at those who had committed this, as they put it, quote, invasion of Gibson's privacy. They're just trying to humiliate her. And I sit here and I wonder, is there nobody left who is actively involved in politics for the Democrat Party who's willing to point out, man, they're not humiliating her. She and her husband humiliated themselves. They're the ones that chose to engage in public perversity, and I'm not required to defend that. I may still prefer that kind of a vote over the Republican alternatives vote in office, but that doesn't mean I'm going to defend and pretend like this is a good thing. No, it's a blight. It's an embarrassment. It's sin, is what it is. Is there nobody left in the Democrat Party that'll do that? That was the question I started asking. And then it's the right's turn. Did you see this whole deal with Lauren Boebert, who has a checkered past and brushes with the law anyway, but she's been turned into kind of a celebrity by the right? Well, she goes with a new beau, a new boyfriend, to a musical theater performance of Beetlejuice out in Denver. I'm sure most of you have seen this. She gets escorted out, she and her date escorted out of the theater by security as they were observed, here's the quote from law enforcement, vaping, singing, and causing a disturbance. But the truth is, when video surveillance emerged, they were guilty of a lot more than that. You don't have to go and watch the video. I'm not encouraging you to, but it is beyond dispute that this currently married congresswoman, and people say, oh, she's going through a divorce. She's going through a divorce, which means she is legally still married. So this married congresswoman, who is a mom also, she was thoroughly groping a man who is not her husband in the dark of the theater, and she was being groped in return. And then when she's escorted out, she flips off the usher, who is just doing his job, and taunts him, saying, quote, do you know who I am? And threatens that she's going to call the mayor. Now, it does in fact get worse. The man that she was with, and even though she's going through a divorce, she's still married. So the man she's obviously cheating on her husband with, this is a leftist, a Democrat, which that's okay. But he owns a gay-affirming bar, has hosted at least one drag show. And if you think that that's irrelevant and a side issue, I guess I need to remind you that one of the things that Lauren Boebert has done, she has built her entire public persona around being a warrior for Christian values in Washington, D.C. She'll tell anybody who will listen, she's tweeted out before, take your children to church, not drag bars. Okay? So the thing, I guess personally, that really torques me about Lauren Boebert is man, when you wear the name of Christ, that has to mean something. And when it doesn't mean something to people, it does a lot of damage, and it's a lot of humiliation for those of us to whom it does mean a great deal. And it's fodder for Satan and his minions to be able to use to bring disrepute on the name of Christ. And that really ticks me off. It really does. Now understand, we're all sinners, and we all have failures, and we all have faults. And if this was an issue of her having a moral failing, I believe in forgiveness, and I believe in grace. Really, really do. I needed it. But this kind of blatant hypocrisy is made worse because it doesn't coincide with repentance. It doesn't coincide with a change in direction. Furthermore, I turn around and I see many on the political right, many people that I would agree with on a great number of issues, they start doing the same thing that leftists are doing with Susanna Gibson. They're not saying, well, yeah, this is deplorable behavior, this is awful behavior, but what is our choice? I mean, we don't like it, we don't condone it, but as far as a representative, if she's our only option, we can't vote somebody from the left into office. That's not what they're saying. No, they're coming out and defending the conduct. You have this congressional candidate from Texas. Her name is Caroline Kane. Her deal was Lauren Boebert is the victim here. Why are we seeing security footage of her? It's none of our business. And on top of that, why haven't we seen any security footage of Jeffrey Epstein's jail cell? And we never saw any security footage of Bill Clinton's Oval Office. And we haven't seen any security footage to figure out whose cocaine bag was in the White House. Do you see what we're doing there? Do you see what she's doing there? It's whataboutism, it's justification, it's, well, this isn't really that bad, here's what's actually bad. Okay, I'm all for you saying that you are questioning what went on in Jeffrey Epstein's jail cell, and that you don't believe that the government's incapable of figuring out whose cocaine bag that was. You can say all of those things, but that is 100% irrelevant to whether or not you should be able to say Lauren Boebert's display of public perversity is just that. It's perverse, it's wrong, it's gross, and it's a blight, not only on the name of Christ and Christians in the culture, but the party that she's a part of, and if you say that you're a part of. And I keep seeing it. I see folks on the right saying they don't want to hear anything about it until Pedo Joe, that means pedophile Joe Biden, and his disgusting sniffing of young girls. Until we start talking about that, I don't want to talk about Lauren Boebert. And then you had some people that posted pictures of her in the provocative dress that she was wearing and say tongue-in-cheek, but not really, we have to re-elect Lauren Boebert. And I'm left here saying the same thing I was saying to the Democrats. Is there nobody left in the Republican Party who is willing to point out that Boebert's conduct is lewd, it's morally grotesque, it is a pox on politically conservative Christians? That's what it is. I don't know how many are left in positions of any kind of power in the Republican Party who are willing to say any such things. And so what this all says to me is we are a society that is awash in the very political idolatry that I've been trying really hard to get away from and escape. This is what happens when you have an overfed people who are drunk on sinful excess. When they conclude collectively that God no longer exists, the only gods that do exist are the golden calves that have been fashioned by the hands of their political masters, the political class. Those are the only gods worth worshiping. That's what I see here. I see people saying Susanna Gibson isn't guilty of perversion and she's not worthy of censure because she votes the right way. They're not saying it with their lips, but that's what they're saying. She's not guilty of any of this stuff. There's nothing wrong with it. And they're only saying it because of the way that she votes. Just like Lauren Boebert isn't a sinful disgrace. She isn't in desperate need of humble repentance. She doesn't need to consider walking away from Congress and getting her life in order. No, she votes the right way, so it's totally fine. And if you are the one that points out, no, this is bad, this is morally grotesque, if you do that, then you are the one that gets attacked. Well, you're judging people. You're casting stones. You're a moralizer is what you are. Actually, how about this? Actually, people that say that are part of the few remaining, the remnant that's left over that still believes that God is God and right is right and wrong is wrong and sin is sin. And society would be a lot better off if we all submitted to that. That's what it makes you. I'm interested in your thoughts. Peter at peterheck.com. That's Peter at peterheck.com. Appreciate all of you who are free subscribers. Keep it up. Stick around. But we'd love to see you bump up, and you can catch our conversation, the rest of this that we're going to talk about here in the second half. But if you are a free subscriber, I've got to leave you here until you bump up. Those of you who are paid subscribers, we got much more to go. The 200-kid baptism service in Auburn that some are calling a revival and other people are filling their drawers about, and the demonization that's going on of concerned parents, whether it's Moms for Liberty or whoever it is. Really concerning to me. We talk about all of that for paid subscribers after the break. The rest of you, I'll see you next week.
The Memo with Peter Heck.
Please patronize and thank all the sponsors of the Heck podcast, including McGonigal's Buick GMC, Terrell's Auto Service, Norris Insurance, Stevens Machine, Creative Financial Center, Indiana Right to Life, Tri-Green Tractor, the Indiana Family Institute, Hartman Family Farms, Liberty Financial Group, the Wyman Group, and J. Watson Creations.